Now we have been making very good progress with our variables. We have seen how to assign values to our variables, but we have seen how to assign only a single type of value to our variables. You can see over here balloons, crackers and hats. All of these data types are called as strings. So whenever you are working with your Python programming, you always have to work with some sort of a data. And this data can be classified into different categories. The first category that we are going to see is something called as a primitive data type. So what do I mean by a primitive data type? It simply means that these data types are already present inside Python. The first data type we have already worked with, it's called as a string. And you can see it's always inside a quote. For declaring a string, you can use double quotes or you can use a single quote. Both of them are valid syntax. The next one is called as an integer. So you can see we have whole numbers. So 45 is a kind of integer. The next one would be a float. Whenever you have some decimal places, it's called as a float inside Python. And the last one is called as a boolean. Boolean can have only two types. Either it can be true or it can be a false. Now let's go back to our code editor and create some of these basic primitive data types. So let's create a new file inside my folder 02 type system. I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to name it as primitive data types.py. Let me add some comments as well. Now let's start creating our variables. First, let us create a variable for holding our string and I'm going to call it as my string. That's it. So my string is my variable and it's going to hold the value of Lewis. Let me spell it right. The next variable would be my integer, my int. For short, it's going to be 45. Next one would be my float. It would be 3.14. The next one would be my bool. It stands for my boolean data. And this time I am going to assign it the value of true. Make sure you always use the T with a capital T. And that's it. We have declared our variables and we have assigned the variables with the primitive data types. Now let's try to print one by one. So I want to say first I want to print my string. Let me just copy and paste it now. The next thing that I want to print would be my integer. Next, let me print out my float, and the last I want to print out my boolean value. Just save the file and let me run the file inside my terminal, and here we have the output: Lewis 45, 3.14 and true. The last thing that I want to discuss in this video is about your styling. For example, you can see right over here, single quotes is also a valid string, and if you use double quotes, it's also a valid string. So which style should you use? Basically, you can use any style, but you have to make sure that you are consistent throughout your code base. In order to avoid such situations when you're working in a large team, the Python community has come up with some of the style formatters. And one of the style formatter is called as black. So if you remember at the beginning, we have installed a couple of optional dependencies and one of the dependency was called as black. If you have not installed, then you can simply open up your terminal. Let me clear all of this. And you can install the dependency by simply typing pip install and black. And this will install the optional dependency. Black is a code formatter and we are going to use black to format our code so that it is consistent throughout. The first thing that I want you to do is I want you to open up the settings for Visual Studio Code. On a Mac, you can do that by typing command and a comma. I think on a Windows, it should be control and a comma. So this is my settings file and I want you to type save. And the first option that I can see over here is called as format on save. I want you to select this. Now again, go back, search for black. So here you can see the first option, Python formatting black path. Make sure you have black right over here. And that's it. Just close your settings file and let me save this file. It's saying that formatter autopape is not installed. No, I don't want to use that one. I want to use black, so I'm just going to click on this one, use black, and that's it. Now if I come back to this and if I put a single quotes, now just watch what happens when I save my file. It automatically formats from a single quote to a double quote. Black is a really useful utility, and we would be using black so that all of our styling is similar.